All these district courts throughout the country are tying our hands, and here's how we will follow them when we get to the United Supreme Court.
I need to ask
we're winning.
a number of questions.
And so, yes,
I know
we're following the orders of the court.
Let me ask my questions. Can you confirm you will not allow any conduct like what is alleged to continue at the DOJ?
This was not a routine hearing. It felt like a public reckoning the moment Patty Murray began pressing Pam Bondi. And the entire exchange was framed around one devastating question. Is the Justice Department still enforcing the law fairly, or is it being bent by power, loyalty, and political protection? Murray did not ease into it. She came in with the force of an accusation, painting a picture of a department that, in her telling, is drifting away from equal justice and toward selective enforcement, institutional favoritism, and abuse of authority. There was no attempt to soften the charge, no polite cushion, just a direct challenge to Bondi's credibility and to the credibility of the department she leads. And what made the moment hit even harder was Bondi's response. Instead of directly confronting the substance of what Murray was raising, she appeared guarded, evasive, and far more focused on deflecting than clarifying. That only intensified the impression that something deeper was being exposed in real time. Murray's argument was not simply that Bondi was underperforming, it was that she was presiding over a system accused of ignoring court orders, sidelining truth-tellers, and tearing down protections the public depends on. Whether every charge ultimately holds up or not, that was the stakes of the exchange. This was bigger than oversight. It was a high-pressure collision over whether the nation's top law enforcement institution can still claim public trust at all.
We're joined by the Vice Chairman of the full committee. Senator Murray is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, we are in a deeply alarming moment where law and order is being replaced by chaos and corruption and really whatever Trump wants. And your department's independence and its capacity to do its job have eroded before our eyes. We have seen respected career officials who've been fired for doing their job. Thousands more are being pushed out with your buyouts and the threat of mass firings, and entire divisions are being eliminated, and grants have been canceled illegally. So I have questions about how and why those decisions are being made, and importantly, whether you're adequately resourcing DOJ to do its job. But before I turn to my questions, I do want to raise my alarm about the troubling pattern of trampling basic rights. Detainees, including U.S. citizens, being shipped overseas without any due process. Elected officials are detained for conducting oversight, and a U.S. senator gets tackled to the ground for asking questions at a press conference. This is not the country I know or the values I believe in, and I hope that colleagues on both sides of the aisle will agree with that. Now, to the questions. Yesterday, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this issue, a former DOJ attorney filed a protected whistleblower complaint accusing Deputy AG Emil Bove and senior DOJ leadership of defying court orders, including through, quote, lack of candor, deliberate delay, and disinformation, unquote. The complaint also accuses this administration of firing the whistleblower for, quote, telling the truth to the court. These allegations are deeply concerning. Now, I know you said that you can't discuss the case, but can you confirm that you agree that this administration should follow court orders?
We will follow court orders, Senator. The entire administration will follow court orders. The problem arises in the district courts. All these district courts throughout the country are tying our hands. And here's how we will follow them when we get to the United Supreme Court.
I need to ask
we're winning.
A number of questions.
And so, yes, we're following the orders of the court.
Let me ask my questions. Can you confirm you will not allow any conduct like what is alleged to continue at the DOJ?
I'm not going to talk about anything that's alleged. What I will talk about with you, hold on, you asked me a question and I get to answer it. What you asked me, alleged conduct that's part of a pending whistleblower lawsuit that was filed on the eve prior to Emil Bove's hearing today.
I'm not asking
highly
about that
suspicious. Hold on, let me keep going. I would run through a wall for Emil Bove and Todd Blanche.
Like to continue with my questions. I have very limited time.
Senator Murray.
Thank you. I just want you to confirm for this you will not allow conduct like that at the DOJ. Yes or no?
I will always support and defend Emil Bovee, and I will defend Todd Blanche. They are two of the finest people I know and two of the ethical people I know.
I was asking about the conduct. Let me keep going here. Now, in April, DOJ abruptly terminated over 300 public safety grants that had already gone through a very rigorous and fair and apolitical application process with no explanation. This is funding to investigate and prosecute drug trafficking, to support foster care kids who experienced abuse or neglect, to expand access to forensic exams to prosecute violent crimes like sexual assault. These really senseless cancellations have already forced public safety organizations to cut employees and services. So when I want to ask you, when you cut off the community-based violence intervention and prevention initiative funding, were you aware it is used to prevent and reduce violent crime?
Yeah, Senator, you weren't here for that, so I'm going to have to repeat myself. We have cut grants. I think we've cut 6%. But if we have cut a grant that you feel should not be cut, please reach out to me. I will personally look at it. We've turned multiple grants back on. Okay. We have an appeal process. But if you want to come to me directly, I would be happy to sit down with you and look at that and help you.
I'm happy. I appreciate
Again, we're doing everything we can.
Okay, but let me just ask you, when you cut off the expanding access to sexual assault forensic examination grant, were you aware that that grant helps our authorities prosecute rape and sexual assault?
I have no idea about that specific grant you're talking about. That's why I said if you want to come sit down with me, I would never cut a grant intentionally that has anything to do.
Those recipients on the other end across the country.
Can you give me the details of that grant?
I can absolutely do that, and my staff will get that to you. But those are two critical ones that I just wanted to ask you about today.
Again, we've turned many grants back on, and we'll continue to. If you want to call me, and we can discuss them with you.
Okay, in your budget request, you propose consolidating the Office on Violence Against Women into the Office of Justice Programs. In 2002, Congress actually codified the office as a permanent, separate, and independent office to implement the Violence Against Women Act. We did that to make sure that violent crimes against women receive the necessary attention, expertise, and resources, and to give the office a strong, independent voice within the Justice Department and federal government. Now your department wants to fade that into the OJP, which violates the intent of the law that we passed. It makes grant programs less effective, and it places a lot more barriers for victims and services they need. And I see that you're cutting the office's resources by about a third. So will you commit to us, the Appropriations Committee, to follow the law and maintain OVW as a separate grant entity?
I will follow the law, but I will not keep that as a separate grant entity. You and I can disagree all day long on what the law is. Well, that's being consolidated into the Office of Justice Programs. So I'm not going to cut, let me answer, I'm not going to cut anything that's going to hurt violence against
not
women.
My question.
It will eliminate
just for your information, Attorney General. In 2002, we codified the office as a permanent, separate, and independent office. So that you need to go back and take a look at that. I know my time is out, but I thank you very much for the time.
And that is where the exchange took an even darker turn, because what came through was not neutrality, not institutional discipline, but what critics would describe as open protection of insiders. Rather than clearly promising to examine possible misconduct or correct it if necessary, Bondi was framed as shielding those closest to her. That is the kind of signal that lands hard with the public, because it suggests accountability may depend less on what was done and more on who is connected. And if that is the perception taking hold, then the problem is no longer just political optics. It becomes a direct challenge to the integrity of the institution itself. Then came another deeply troubling point. When pressed over funding cuts affecting victims of violence, sexual assault investigations, and community safety programs, Bondi acknowledged she did not know the specifics. That is not a minor gap. In a role tied so directly to law enforcement priorities and public protection, that kind of detachment raises serious questions about leadership and control. You cannot present yourself as a guardian of public safety while appearing unsure about decisions that affect some of the most vulnerable people in the country. That contradiction alone cut straight through the defense. But the most damaging part of the hearing was not any single answer. It was the pattern. Over and over, direct questions were met with deflection. Serious concerns were brushed aside. Chances to show transparency came and went without a clear response. And when that pattern repeats often enough, it stops looking like caution and starts looking like a credibility problem. What Patty Murray put on display here was not just a clash of political views. It was a warning about how power appears to be operating inside the Justice Department. If a department cannot firmly commit to following court orders, cannot clearly explain major decisions, and will not hold itself to the same standard it applies to everyone else, then the real damage goes far beyond one tense hearing. It spreads outward, weakening public faith in the very promise of equal justice under the law.